Welcome back to MMA Al Dente. Carl Deaton III versus Alex Munoz. Alex Munoz is 6'2" as a pro, 33 years old, and he's got 2 inches of height and 5 inches of reach over 33-year-old Carl Deaton III, who is 17-6. Deaton, he's got 3 times the experience almost, and a lot of it against, some of it against good fighters, even though maybe he's lost to most of them. He's still been in there with some really good fighters, Carl Deaton. And Munoz, he's only been in there with a few good fighters. You know, really the 2 guys he lost to, Pena and Nasrat. And then he's got 2 solid wins before that, Troy Lamson and Nick Newell, the one-arm fighter. But Deaton, he's a guy that should be much more comfortable in all situations, I'd say. He's more of a grappler, but definitely comfortable on the feet as well. And I guess he's forced to be because he's not the best wrestler and he's not the best athlete. So he doesn't always get to dictate the fight. But Deaton's got skills everywhere. He's definitely a tough guy. He's only been knocked out once many years ago to this solid American regional fighter, Mike Hernandez. His 2 submission losses are to really good fighters. Abel Callum got him out of there with a rear naked choke in round 2. And Joe Selecki, rear naked choke in round 2, which was his last fight. And his 3 decision losses are all to good fighters too. Vince Murdoch, this guy Jonas Flock, out-wrestled him. And Alejandro Flores Garcia over in PFL beat him by a split decision. That was really on the feet, but it wasn't too dominant. It was a close fight, a shit fight, and whatever. But that's the thing with Deaton. Deaton's got good skills everywhere. Wants to be on the ground, doesn't always have the wrestling prowess to get it there. But he can hang on the feet as well. Good enough striker. Maybe his best win came against Justin James, former UFC fighter. That was right after he left the UFC. And that was with grappling, pretty much. That was with grappling. He out-grappled him. Although, again, his wrestling wasn't exactly there. He knocked the guy down. He knocked Justin James down for one of the takedowns, so to speak. And then he caught a kick for the other one and whatever. But once he was on top, he was smothering Justin James. James may not have been the best grappler, but still, it's a good win. Beat the guy Nate Williams, this solid regional fighter. Beat him by 5-round decision, 3-round decision. But really, not too many great wins for Carl Deaton. He's just a guy that's looked pretty tough in defeat. And that Joe Selecki debut, I don't know, I think that was on short notice. But even if it was on a full camp, that's an insanely tough debut. Fighting a great grappler like that who'd beaten a guy like Jim Miller. You know, you make your debut, you shouldn't be fighting even a guy like Jim Miller. Look at what happened to Jesse Butler a few weeks ago. But Carl Deaton has a lot more experience than a guy like that, and you know, he seems to be a pretty well-versed guy. He had a 5-round war with Chepe Mariscal, beat him by a 5-round split decision, but then the fight was overturned because Chepe tested positive for whatever the fuck. But Deaton's good enough everywhere, and I expect him to be comfortable. That's his primary trait going into this fight with Munoz. With Munoz, I expect him to have better wrestling, I think. You know, he's a guy that doesn't always look like it, but he should have better wrestling. He's this alpha male wrestler, and he's going to be the better athlete, Alex Munoz. And we've seen he can hang in the Luis Pena fight and the Nasrat Hapcras fight. Even though I don't know if he won a round in either fight. He won the first round, I guess, against Luis Pena. But in both fights, you know, his wrestling certainly wasn't there for him. Which, you know, whatever. It's got to be there for you. And but he was able to hang on the feet. He's definitely a good enough striker. He's a southpaw with some decent pop at his punches, you know. He's definitely comfortable banging as well. He wasn't overwhelmed by those guys, especially Nasrat Hapcras. I figured if Hapcras beats this wrestler guy making his debut, he's going to put him away. He didn't put him away. That was a very impressive loss, so to speak, even though, you know, on paper it was a shutout. But he's also got some solid victories. Beat this guy Troy Lamson and Nick Newell. Nick Newell's the guy with the one arm, you know, that fought on the Contender Series and the PFL. They threw him in there with Gaethje. You can believe that. But Munoz definitely has, you know, a pretty good skill set, I'd say. You know, based on how he looked in defeat. He also, in one of his wins, he got a 3-second knockout. I should have mentioned that. He legit knocked the guy out in 3 seconds. I believe that's on YouTube as well. But yeah, he's definitely he's got a good sharp left hand, good counter left hand. I just wish he had better counter takedowns, to be honest. But I think here, even though he's had a long layoff and he's fighting a fighter that hasn't had a layoff, I am expecting Munoz to win this fight. I'm expecting him to come in, be in his prime, utilize his wrestling, which I'm sure he knows is something he needs at the UFC level here. And also, I think if he's not able to utilize his wrestling on the feet, he's good enough to hang with Carl Deaton on pure athleticism alone. And, again, he's got some solid power, Munoz, and proven he can hang with guys like Nasrat Haqparast. It bodes well for him. And I think overall, Munoz with athleticism and wrestling and the little promise he has shown despite being 0-2 in the UFC, I'm expecting him to get the better of Carl Deaton Jr. Carl Deaton III. But it'd be interesting. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like on the ground. Wrestling, I think he'd have to be careful, Munoz. Score points with takedowns and land some safe ground and pound. I don't think he's going to want to engage too much in a grappling battle with Carl Deaton, who I expect to have just the overall better submission game. But again, I'm going with Munoz. I envision it being a decision, although who really knows, because again, he's got solid pop in his punches, and he's been away for a long time and all that. So I'm just putting a little bit of money on him on minus 140, his money line. You can get decision at plus 150. I do think that is his primary path to victory, but I don't know that much about him as a fighter. I got to see him fight more than 8 fights before I get a grasp on him. And I'm just more comfortable banking on the athleticism, getting him a victory in one way or the other. The money line's the play, minus 140. Like, share, subscribe, all that horseshit. Check out my other videos.